Good morning, this is Ron Brown. It is April 19th, 2023. In this video, or this series of videos, I should say, I'm going to talk about code blue and code red. This goes under the category of scanning with HGS Investor. Now these scans have come about from a user who uses Gil Morales' service, but he wanted a way to look for some stocks with a trigger, and I decided to incorporate the Force Indexes and the Bongos into the scan, and that's what these videos are going to be about. It's a little bit complicated to explain, but easy to use, so I'm going to do it over a series of videos, or at least a couple of videos. And as you go through these videos, remember any stock index or ETF mentioned in this presentation is not a recommendation to buy or sell. All trading strategies are used at your own risk. In this first video, I'm going to explain what code red, code blue are, and the indicators, and how they work. Now, this is one of Gil's charts that I did several years ago, and he calls this my secret weapon chart. And code blue comes from the name when all of the indicators are blue, which indicates a strong stock or a strong industry group. In this instance, you can see everything is blue right here. And this is the Bongo Weekly, and I'll explain that. This is the Bongo Daily. These are the kahunas, which really don't figure into the scans, just there for reference, which means a strong move up. When I put the crosshair on here, notice that on this big bar there is a kahuna, which means a big up move in the Bollinger Bands. Conversely, on a large down move, you're going to get a rose or a red bar like right here. But these are just visual references. We can actually scan on the Force 213 and the Bongo Weekly and Daily, but the triggers are based upon the Force Indexes, and I'll get into that as I go along. I'm going to begin with a definition or a description of what the Bongo Weekly and the Bongo Daily indicators are, these two indicators that are at the top. Now, if you ever have questions about these, just go to your Help menu and type in Bongo and hit the Enter key, and there is an explanation here of Bongo Daily, Bongo Weekly, and Bingo and Bongo. Bingo is an oversold indicator. These indicators were developed by a group of high-growth stock investor users 15 years ago. I think there were 5 in the group. Dr. Jeffrey Scott was part of that, Robert Minkowski, I think David Gilardi, and I'm not sure who else was in the group. It's been quite a while ago, but anyway, they were given the task of coming up with an indicator which would help keep traders, investors in the market on the correct side of a trade. So they came up with something called the Bongo. Bongo Daily, Bongo Weekly. There's not much of an explanation in here. It just says if it's green, it's showing strength. If it's red, it's showing signs of weakness. So let me go in and show you what it really is now. I'm in the charts that are being shipped with the Gil Morales files, but I'm going to go to a different chart. And this chart is in my files. I'm just going to type in Bongo. And let's try this right here. Okay, this is the one I want. It's Bongo Weekly and Daily RSI lines. Now I'll make this full screen. And this is a different color. This is code green and code red rather than code red, code blue and code reds. But this is what they consist of. I'll bring this down and I'll bring this down. And I'll even these out a little bit. But to get a bongo signal, the RSIs have to be in a certain order, or the internal relative strength. And if I right mouse click, edit the indicator, click on Bongo Weekly, yes means the indicator is signaling an upward bias, it's colored green, and so on. And here are the parameters. The moving average has to be a crossover of the 9-period moving average down here in the price window, and the RSI order, the relative strength. The 8 has to be above the 14, and the 14 has to be above the 19. They both have to be above the 19, stacked in that order. So when that happens, I'll do it on the weekly, they are not quite stacked in that order, and they are at this point and at the same time. Put a crosshair on here. The Bongo Weekly signals because the price is above the 9-day simple moving average, and the RSI indicators are stacked. It's kind of hard to see, but they are, or the signal wouldn't be there. And then as it gets stronger, as the price goes up on this, and I'm in the infrastructure software index, I just happen to randomly grab that. The strength is increasing as this price stays above the 9-day simple moving average down here, and the relative strength lines get further apart. Now when they start coming back together again, notice that they didn't cross to the downside, but the price has crossed to the downside. So if the price is not above the 9-day simple moving average, that doesn't matter on the weekly because these RSI indicators are still stacked correctly. But on the daily, let's go down here to the daily bongo. It went below the 9-period moving average here, and you can see that the RSI indexes were stacked properly until here when the 8 came down through the, let's review those again. Same thing, the 8 came down through the 14 and the 19, and consequently this is a short-term indicator. It turned red, and at the same time the price was going down through the 9-period simple moving average. You can see that the daily, or bongo daily, is much choppier than the weekly, and the weekly is essentially designed to keep you in positions longer. Now you can get hurt that way too if the daily goes down and the weekly stays strong but the price goes down a lot. You can see what happened here, and then here was another spurt up, but the bongo weekly had stayed green, and then here was a movement down, and then finally back up, and there were pocket pivots here. The 3 crossed the 6. These are my moving averages here. The 6 crossed the 18, and the 18 was above the 50. So strength down here, pocket pivots, the crossover here, and all during this time period, the bongo weekly remained positive. These indicators were created to take some of the emotion out of trades and also to give you entry points when you're using both the bongo weekly and the bongo daily, both to the upside and to the downside. These indicators have nothing to do with volume, only price and internal relative strength, and that's why I'm also using the force indexes in conjunction with the bongos with these new indicators that I'm putting in Gill's files for everybody to use who uses HGSI. Now I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going back to the code blue scans. I'm sorry, I changed the warehouse scan. That's all right. But I wanted to change the chart and not the warehouse scan. Okay, I go back up to Gil Morales, and here's his secret weapon bar chart, as it says right here. Here's the bongo daily, bongo weekly, the kahunas, and the force indexes, all combined into a single chart he liked it so much when it was put together that he called it his secret weapon chart. Now this, once again, is a group index generated by HGSI, and I'll zoom out on this. And you can see, looking at this, that the Bongo Daily, multiple entry and exit points here, but the Bongo Weekly stayed strong throughout this period. In other words, the relative strength indicators were stacked appropriately, and it didn't come down through. I don't have a 9-day crossover in this chart. You're going to have to go to my charts, or maybe I'll add that chart into Gills before I put this out. But you can see the long-term strength there, and then the ins and outs based upon the short-term Bongo Daily, and then of course the force indexes, which are a lot choppier. Now let's get into the force indexes. There's a Force 13 and a Force 2, and once again I'm going to go into the help file, and I'm going to type in force, click on force index, click on this, and it tells you what it is. It's the volume multiplied by the difference in the close from yesterday. So it's today's close minus yesterday's close times today's volume. And then the indicators that I'm using are a 2-period average of that force index and a 13-period average of that force index. There's also something called the absolute value of the 1-day force index. It's explained here. This lets you rank the magnitude of the move rather than the direction. The warehouse values will always be positive. The cell's color shows the direction, green or red, for that force index, and I've got that in the warehouse views for us. So let's go back to the chart, and I'll make this full screen, and you can see how choppy this is just looking at the index. This is indicative of what's happening in the market right now. But if you just look at the Bongo Weekly, if this were a stock, you might have stayed with it the whole time and ignored all this, but there are several entry and exit points here. Now, in videos that come after this, I'm going to show you how to find stocks and indexes where the Bongo Weekly has been blue for a long time, or red, and the same thing with the Bongo Daily, and we can do something similar with the Force 2 and 13. And now it's all based upon the days since these indicators were triggered. Now, I envision this being used more with stocks than with indexes, but I wanted to be able to screen on indexes just so we can get triggers on the indexes to see when groups may be moving. I'm just going to go into, well, I'm already in the industries, as you can see, and I want to point out that there are several different scans here. These are the warehouse views under Gil Morales end of day and intraday scans. Here's a 2-day trigger. Here is a force index 2-day down, but it's under code blue, which means that it's positive, but the force index 2 has pulled back. Number 3 is force index 2-day positive, which means it's positive and it's not triggering. Number 4 is 2-day positive with the Bongo Weekly no. So this could be an early entry if the force index is turning positive, but the Bongo Weekly is no, as you can see over here. And then the last one is force index 2-day positive, and the Bongos are yes. Both Bongos columns are green, and the Force 2 is positive. So you may find, or you will find, stocks or indexes in this case that are moving up with the Bongos positive and the 2 positive, and hopefully the Force 13 is positive too. That's not part of the filler. Let's just bring up that medical equipment, and you can see that everything. And I just rebuilt this morning during the market. You can do this while the market's open to get signals during the day. And this is the medical equipment index, and you can see that it's the 19th when this was generated. And if you look down in the corner, you can see this is the 19th here. So the beauty of this is we can build these indexes during the day and find out which groups are moving based upon the 2-day and the 13-day force. Now I want to point out that the 2 is very choppy, and if you bring this down, you can see where the 2 crosses the line, and it goes from red to blue, and then the 13, the histogram, turns positive here. It was negative here, it turns positive here, and it stays positive. So you can write out some of these ups and downs with the 2-day force. If you're long here, if the bongos are long and you're long on the 13, if it pulls back, that's more of a buying opportunity rather than a sell. So you just look at all of these indicators as a unit and try to get a feel for where the stock or the indexes are going, or are at, I should say. Okay, I'm going to end this video right here. That's just a brief explanation of what the bongo weeklies and dailies do. And next I'm going to go into those scans that I just showed you. I showed you the code blue, the code red are just the opposite if you're looking to short. And there will be another video or two explaining how to use these scans.